A patient is receiving multiple IV bolus doses, 720 milligrams every 12 hours. Steady state peak and trough concentrations are 25 milligrams per liter and 14 milligrams per liter, respectively. Calculate the patient-specific clearance and volume of distribution for this drug in this patient. So, because this drug is being given IV bolus intermittently every 12 hours, and we have steady state peak and trough concentrations, we can use the equation C min minimum concentration at steady state, C min steady state equals maximum concentration at steady state, C max steady state times e to the negative kt, where k is the rate constant of elimination and t is the time between doses. Solving for t involves taking the natural logarithm, and we get 0.048 hours to the negative 1. We can also express the maximum concentration at steady state, 25 milligrams per liter, as the minimum concentration of drug at steady state plus the dose over the volume of distribution, and solve for volume of distribution. This is because with multiple IV bolus doses, we're assuming that as soon as a dose is given, all of the drug will be in the plasma. So that allows us to solve for volume of distribution with a peak and a trough at steady state. And so we have a volume of distribution of 65 liters. Now, clearance is the product of the rate constant of elimination and the volume of distribution, and that is 3.1 liters per hour. Question 2. A patient is receiving an IV bolus dose regimen, 720 milligrams every 12 hours. The therapeutic window for this drug is 10 to 20 milligrams per liter. This patient's steady state peak and trough concentrations are currently 25 milligrams per liter and 14 milligrams per liter, and the patient has signs of toxicity. Which of the following dosage regimens would be most appropriate? I will recommend what I think would probably be an appropriate dosage recommendation based on this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to we know here that the patient's I'm sorry. So this patient here is actually the same patient from the previous question. So I'm gonna skip a little with the calculations. The rate constant of elimination is 0.048 hours to the negative 1, and that's because the peak and trough concentrations are the same as before, and the patient was receiving the same dose. So with the rate constant of elimination, I am going to use that as well as the Cmax and Cmin concentrations. Again, this is just, and I'm going to solve for a dosing interval that would achieve Cmax of 20 milligrams per liter and a Cmin of 10 milligrams per liter. When I solve for tau is the dosing interval, I get 14.4 hours. In clinical practice, this would most likely be rounded to 12 hours because drugs are usually given every 4 or every 6, every 8 or every 12 or every 24 hours usually. So using 12 hours as my dosing interval, I'm now going to solve for dose. And this equation here is just C min steady state equals C max steady state, which is dose divided by volume of distribution, times e to the negative kt divided by 1 minus e to the negative k tau. T and tau are the same here because the dose the dose is being assumed to be given immediately after a trough or a C-min concentration is obtained. So solving for dose, I get 500 milligrams about, and I will check and make sure this is not going to result in a supra or overly therapeutic, potentially toxic maximum concentration. And solving for Cmax steady state, I get 18 milligrams per liter. So my recommendation would be 500 milligrams every 12 hours. IV bolus every 12 hours. A drug with a therapeutic window of 5 milligrams per liter to 10 milligrams per liter will be administered as multiple IV bolus doses. The drug has the following pharmacokinetic parameters: volume of distribution 50 liters and clearance of 8.6 liters per hour. What dose rate would you recommend to produce an average steady state concentration of 7.5 milligrams per liter? So I would answer this question by solving for the rate constant of elimination, because we know the clearance and the volume of distribution, and the rate constant of elimination is 0.17 per hour. Next, I will use the equation that relates C-min steady state to C-max steady state, and using the ends of the therapeutic window to determine an appropriate dosing interval. I use this T is the same thing as tau, the dosing interval, because again, this is multiple IV bolus doses. And so when I solve for T, I get 4 hours, about 4 hours. Now I can check this, and now I can check to make sure my max and min concentrations at steady state will not be out of range. And in doing this, I got C max steady state 10 milligrams per liter and C min steady state 5 milligrams per liter. Now, I think a reasonable recommendation, and this would really depend on the drug and a lot of other factors, but for the purposes of this question, I think it would be reasonable to recommend 250 milligrams IV bolus every 4 hours. Because in clinical practice, it would not be convenient to give a dose more frequently than every 4 hours usually. However, another option which would potentially be more useful would be to give the drug as a continuous infusion rate. And so if we were to keep decreasing the dosage interval, tau here, if we were to keep decreasing that, we would come up with a rate of an infusion rate, which is basically just multiple equivalent doses given very rapidly after each other. And so we can use, and so this the steady state equation, the rate of administration can approximate. I mean, dose divided by tau can approximate a rate of administration if we want to give the dose more frequently. But if we give the dose more frequently, we're going to have to give a lower dose in order for the steady state concentration to not be affected. So if we were to give it as a continuous infusion, it would be 64.5 milligrams per hour.